so let's get started. Can I ask participants that are online to please mute their mics so that we don't have feedback? We are recording today's session so that we can make it available to anyone who needs to share it with others, or you just want to go back and refresh your memory about what we said today. Just give a minute for everybody to get situated, both online and here. So my name is Ann Bruner. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for One Washington. And I wanted just to express that I feel like this is a really exciting time for this program and for the work at hand. I know that there are many things that we'll do together as partners going forward. And we'll talk more about that here in just a little bit. But I just want to give my appreciation for the roles that you play and how you are helping your organization in the things that need to happen on a day-to-day basis, and also in relationship to the One Washington program. So with that, let's get started. So in today's agenda, we're going to have a review of the program and the timeline. Then we're going to talk about the system inventories and interfaces. And we will talk about then the next piece that comes with that. Also, current agency requests, and then go into roles and responsibilities, key takeaways, and how to stay informed, and then open it up for some questions. I have asked John Wright to partner with me in this presentation today. So he will be helping us to go over again the roles and responsibilities as we go further in the agenda. All right, let's get started. So the program timeline. You know, you think about where the program started back in 2014, and some of you have been involved all along the way. Some of you are new to this. But this basically just gives us a gist of what has happened before, where we are today. If you look in the middle of that slide, you can see 2020. And we are just about ready to announce the software that has been selected and to put out for a system implementer RFP. That's a huge step. And if Van was here, I'm going to kind of do a mind meld of him at this point. But the thing is no one on this journey, on this particular topic, has been at this juncture. So the hill that we have all climbed is making a difference. The work you're doing is making a difference. And we are now at this particular junction to make the selection and then also put out for a system implementer, which means there's lots more to come. So some of you have seen this particular presentation before. I just want to orient you for some of those that have not. This was a systems replacement timeline that was approved by our Enterprise Steering Committee. You can see on the top there today through June 22nd, then June of 2020. Wow, 2022. Got a little tongue-tied there in my brain. And then moving into July of 2022. And so forth. Down the left-hand column, you see where General Ledger Cost Allocation Standard, and then going on down, is the functions and processes. There's a little mix of both in there just to make sure that we're talking about that. And then you can see where by the orange arrows where we expect that those particular functions or processes to be delivered. Key thing that I would like you to focus on in this particular slide is system replacement timeline is the second kind of speaking bubble, and that is after replacement, a new financial systems becomes a system of record July 2022. So we are going live July 2022. Yay! All right, so let's talk a little bit about the modernization of the roadmap, and these have been out there as well, where we're talking about different phases and different things that are happening between what will be implemented in phase 1A, 1B, and then going into 2 and 3. I want to just pause here for a second and just say that this is the best information that the program had to delineate and share with the Enterprise Steering Committee about what they should approve. When the SI comes on, there may be some slight tweaking or variances in that. So while we have this as what we know for phases, there might be a few things that might be traded in and out between them, depending on how and what our SI gives us as guidance. So you see down on the left-hand side a red circle, and it's talking about the time today of where the software is selected to where then the system implementer will come on, and then we're working towards the first set of activities under the financial implementation that comes live in that time that I said, July of 2022. So let's dig down in that just a little bit more so that you're prepared if you get questions to talk about other things that might be there. So right now, we asked for you to define your data requirements and elements. You have done a great job in identifying the systems that you have in your organization and also the interfaces. We need a little cleanup, but most of them look pretty good, and I appreciate your due diligence to get all of that in. But now it's time to start defining the data requirements out of those elements that support those data interfaces. And in doing so, that then helps us to also define, to move the interface connection points to the integration layer. And you're going to see some different nomenclature coming out about this, but we're trying to get it all right. But basically, how you connect to download your data, your connection point from Mappers today, we want you to move that into the next area. So there's a question.
Just want to clarify, this slide is supposed to be July 1st, 2022.
Oh, thank you for that clarification. I didn't even realize that, so sorry about that. We'll get that corrected before we send it out. The next thing that we'll be following after we talk about the connection points that are happening and getting those done by January of 2021 is to start working on the agency's business transformation. So a lot of your business people and some of your technical people will be working together to talk about the business transformation that will be happening for the new system and how that's going to work. That's going to give you some aha moments, and it's going to give you some, oh, I didn't know it was going to operate that way. So where you're going to have to dive down and to figure out how that's going to work. It's also then going to align your data flows. So things that you do and how you get data and move data around, even in your organization, may change. And you'll know more of that based on how your business processes are changed, and that will give you a good idea then what the data flows need to do to support that. Again, then the third one there, data conversion. And this is a great topic. We all love our data, whether it's in your spreadsheet, whether it's in your database, or it's in your system in some other way. So we use data in multiple different areas. Also, we share that data amongst not only other technical people, but also in business. And you use it to report out a lot about what is your mission critical objectives. So the data is an important aspect. It's kind of like a bit of a vein running through your agency that helps you to connect to many things that you do. So in that data conversion, there's some decision points that we're going to have to come up with, and that is what's going to be in the ERP, what's still active and real and needs to be in the ERP as far as data conversion, what is old data, and where does that get housed, and is that going to be in the current data warehouse called the Webby that we take data out of today, or in some other data warehouse or data lake? And also, for the systems that you may be decommissioning, where does the data that lives in those systems? And you'll be having those conversations within your organizations to appropriately assign the data and what parts of conversion will be where. And we'll be helping to work with you on the ERP and the Webby side so that we make sure that your past to the current or future and the future back to the past is still relative for you to make good decisions and continue to look at the trending of how your organization operates, what it serves for the critical things that you do every day. And that's an important thing as also to help the legislature and your OFM budget understand that there isn't these wide gaps or variances about how you report your information. And then lastly, test to ensure business continuity of operations. So really, we want to make sure that there's no break in between when we turn on July 1 of 2021, no, 22. See, now I'm going to get myself confused. So when we turn on July 1 of 2022, that you already know how your data is going to be coming in and how your data is going to be coming out. So this picture right here is a beginning of a business process ecosystem. This particular information was pulled out of some other documentation that we have. We know that it needs to be improved because there's details in this that you also will need to better understand what of your systems and their business processes and sub-processes are going away to those that are coming. And these are some of the details that you've been asking for to support some of that future decision making that you'll be coming up to with your organization. So in this particular slide, I wanted to go back over to what are your agency's impacts. As a point of contact, you're helping to give communication up, down, and across to your colleagues, and trying to help them to understand what One Washington is about and how potentially you can help them to be prepared for the activities that will be happening in their organization. These are just a few. It's not to be totally inclusive, but I wanted to give you a little bit more future look about where are the things that will be impacting you. So we already know that you're working on your systems and your interfaces. Some of you doing a little more cleanup than others. Some of you are absolutely done. We're also now looking at doing some planning and getting you guys scheduled on your integration connections. So your technical staff, whoever in your organization is helping to get the data in and out of your organization will be a key person. Also, we have at OFM on the integration team and the data team that they're working to assist you with this. And also then we have Lori and Misty. So Lori and Misty, could you do a little wave so everybody knows? So those two ladies are there and they'll be helping you as well. So again, the data flows when your agency starts going through business transformation. and looking at how the processes are working, those data flows are going to become a key aspect of how they're going to be supported in their operations. And then lastly, the data conversion that I mentioned earlier. Staff resources. There are some that will provide in-kind resources, and then we have what are going to be some policy changes that will be happening along with the process changes. Next is the transition of agency business flows, and that's where you're going to want to start looking at whose role and how they are working in that particular business flow. In the other transformations that I have been on, sometimes we see that there are 3 people who have distinct roles and they're parsed out for very distinct things. In the modernization, sometimes we see where that becomes into one role. And so partly when we're coming back to you is to also to look around security and how the access to the system. So that will be important to think through those data business flows and how, the agency's business flows, and how you will look to see how a person will deliver the work that they are doing on a day-to-day basis. And training. Training, we will try to have a sandbox up and giving you lots of opportunity to participate in that sandbox as we go forward. We know that agency initiatives may be put on the back burner. This is going to be hard. A lot of agencies' roadmaps are already full, and they're going to have to carve out space to put into your agency's roadmap about the activities that are coming with One Washington. So I encourage you to have conversations not only with your EPMO or your project management office or your CIO about what that roadmap might be. And then time spent on DPs. We want to make sure that we're giving you enough information so that you can prepare for the things that you need to ask for, and also give you enough information so that you don't create work that's not necessary. So we'll have more conversation about that going forward as well. And then contractor partnerships. Changes in agency agreements, certainly interagency agreements will be established, and service level agreements with agencies in One Washington. So there will be more of that coming. And then also changes in revenue streams. So there's maybe impacts to that from different ways of how things would happen. I remember something that I was forgetting here, changes in agency agreements. I know that some of you have third-party contractors who are in charge of some of your interfaces. So I encourage you to start having conversations with them and finding out what parts need to change, what part they need to change, or will it stay the same? Because you'll need to make sure you get them involved early, and you're giving them time to respond to the changes that you will need in these systems that agencies do not control those interfaces on. Does that make sense? I see a few nods. Okay, I'm going to go. So I wanted to just report out to you some of the statistics we got out of the systems and interface inventories that were submitted. So I'm going to share with you some highlights from the top 10. These are the top 10 agencies you see in this slide with the highest number of interfaces. So DOL, you're a great winner. You have many of the interfaces that are up there. DOT has 29, but you can see in the list as it goes down, there are over 442 systems out of about 600 that are listed just in the top 10. So there is a workload that we all need to acknowledge in these particular agencies is going to be more than some agencies who have just maybe one or two. And we'll need to assist them and get them planned in the timing to help them to move along in the schedule. The next thing that I want to share with you is the 10 systems with the most interfaces. So let's pick Department of Natural Resources, So it looks like you have about 35. So you got on the register of having some of the largest number of interfaces. And there's a reason for the different kinds of systems that you have in your organizations based on the business that you do relative to your mission. So we'll need to make sure that we're ensuring business continuity. Out of here, there is 597 interfaces, and this is out of about 1,000, just for the top 10. Here we're trying to show you, give you a semblance of a picture of how these interfaces break up by business area or business function. So you can see that here we have the agencies that have the top in budget, finance, procurement, and I'll let you look at these a little more detail when you try not to strain, at least right now, in HR, payroll, and line of business. So this can give you a semblance of where you rate compared to other agencies. Of course, you know, you can check with those that submitted for your agency. You can see directly the amount of how many systems and how many interfaces you have. So again, the current state is 622 of the systems, and it looks like agencies have declared that they would retire about 94 to 125 of those. They need a little more clarity to understand what's in and out when we talked about the business processes. And then on the interfaces, there's 1,039, and it looks about 329 of those have already been declared that they would retire those. So we don't want you to spend time working to do everything on those systems that are going away. But you will need, again, just my point about decommissioning, you will need to decide whether the data inside that system has a value to you, and where will you place that data once you know what is being put in, converted over into the ERP. Does that make sense? Okay, just check it. Okay, so on October the 16th, you received a request from us. Lori had been working with the data custodians and the data stewards for over a year at this point, preparing us for these days, and I thank all of the individuals who were involved in that work. Their request was to fill out tabs 1 and 2 for the systems and the interfaces, and to submit those by December the 19th. And now we're at the data tab, which is going to be submitted and due by April 1st. So I just want to reiterate, the data tab 3 information supports your agency's systems ability to connect to the new ERP. System inventory tab data is needed to help us and you to establish your agency's data requirements and the impacts on your business processes, the technology changes. It will have impacts on staff resources who have to help to put these pieces into place and dedicate time to answering lots and lots of questions. It'll have impact on costs, not only in your organization, but for the state as a whole. So where we can find economies of scale or centers of excellence to deliver services, we're going to want to do that to keep costs down at a minimum. And also with your contractor partnerships, please do not forget this piece. It takes time. I know it takes time for you to work with your contractors and to help them to know what they're doing, what you're doing, and what the state of Washington is doing to prepare for this day. And then use this detailed information to estimate application integration changes. So right now, the integration team at OFM has been meeting, and they're trying to figure out the timeline and the resources as a whole in order to support the state of Washington and the agencies for part of the data access and the data flows to make sure that's happening correctly. And then lastly, to assess agency readiness for the change. So you may have put in the data tab, you answered some questions. Yes, I have the right resources. No, this is not a complex data interface change. We have the right number of people to answer the business questions. So you answered many of those questions, but over time, those may change, and our OCM staff will be coming back around to talk with you and to check in with you over time to make sure we know where things are as we're all getting ready for that date of when we implement. I also wanted to share with you that there will be an escalation path in which I want to make sure you're prepared for. You do a great job, and there will be messaging going out not only to you, but also to your agency director and to your CIO. So I want to just carefully go through this with you so that you understand, and then it will also you'll be have the presentation, so it'll be a reminder of those things as well. So by 5 o'clock on Friday, March 6th, we'd like you to at least do a hypothesis of how much percentage of your data element pieces are done, and to submit that to One Washington. If your data tab is completely done, then we are, and you've checked with Lori and Misty, and we know that that's complete, then we will put a complete on the wall of success that will be out on the website. But for right now, we will report that percentage on the wall of success, and then on March 9th, we'll be emailing your agency director and your CIO to let them know what percentage you indicated as where you are in the completion of that work. On March 9th and the 16th, we'd like for you to, again, remind us at the end of the weeks about your percentage. We'll put that up on the wall of success. And then on March 23rd, we will report at that point to your agency director and CIO again the percentage of the work that's done or that you're complete. And then by March 30th, an email reminder if we still haven't seen anything, just to give you a little poke on our side. And then on April 2nd, we will mail the results out to all the agencies of where they are. So again, this is trying to make sure that your agency is knowing the importance of this request. And if you're not quite getting enough support, then we can send it to them and let them know too. The other piece that I would say that I want to reiterate is we have now scheduled additional workshops for any agency that wants to schedule some time. You can contact the One Washington box to sign up for a workshop, and then we'll get back to you to validate that. But we want to be as supportive as possible in order to make sure that you have the success that you need to go forward. So going back to the project, your agency's project roadmap, and I'm going to bring this up just to reiterate one more time as well. I pulled some examples off of the OCIO dashboard that show some of the important projects that are happening just in these 5 agencies, and this is just one. But some of these projects are pretty heavy duty, and some of them go out not just 1 year and not just a couple months. Some of them go out a couple years. That means you have resources planned and time planned and activities planned within your organization. So it's really important to make sure that the organization all the way through is understanding what will happen and the work that's going to be needed to support One Washington and how they're going to carve that in with what is already happening. And with that, I will invite my colleague, John Wright, to come up and talk with you.
Thank you, Ann. Hi, everybody. So roughly a year ago, we introduced the Agency Point of Contact Network. You'll remember that we had been distributing communications, kind of the buckshot approach for all the time prior to that. And that wasn't very happy for you, wasn't very happy for us, and then the point of contact network was able to be stood up. So when we first rolled this out a year ago, this is the exact illustration that we distributed. Some of you may have seen it then if you've been a point of contact for the last year. The theory was that we would push all new agency impacting requests out directly to the point of contact network. And then it would be the POCs, yourselves, who are responsible then to assign and manage the work up and down inside the agency. The point of the point of contact network, right, is about results and accountability. And that's why you all are here today, because Anne and her team are feeling some tensions on your behalf, right, because they've got the list of agencies that haven't yet submitted the data tab, and so results. So part of our effort today then in re-looking at the point of contact network is to spend a few minutes and tease out possibly any impediments or things that are in your way that are keeping you from being successful as a point of contact. And we realize some of you guys are working in the project management office, some CIOs, some CFOs, multiple hats. Today we're asking you to put on your PCO, your point of contact hat. By way of illustration, let's just walk through the diagram a little bit further too. So one of the things that you may have experienced a little bit of tension on in the last year is that when we kick out the original work impacting email that has agency impacts in it, that goes to the PCO, then if there's a work group that is stood up subsequently, the work group communicates directly with the members of your agency and your staff that have been assigned to that specific work activity. In some cases, we've had PCOs ask if they could be CC'd on everything. And it represents a one-off request at this point. We're not geared or set up or even have the tools to be able to CC the PCOs on every single communication. As an example, I probably see only 1% of the communications that leave One Washington. So I don't even know all the things that we're communicating out there with your staff. So that's not a thing we're able to do at this point. And then lastly, the newsletter and broad communications, we send those directly out, again, on the buckshot approach. So I think that I want to go back to the middle one there, the subsequent work group communications. For those of you who are aware, we're in the middle of a due diligence process right now, and there was an exception that we encountered in December where we did not reach out to the points of contact directly, and you may have already encountered that you have folks in your agency, potentially, who are involved with us in the due diligence process. And I apologize on behalf of One Washington. We did not anticipate or we didn't have the ability to look ahead and see that we were going to encounter that kind of a situation. So we weren't trying to be underhanded or work behind your back. We were definitely caught between a hard timeline in order to get to done and being able to protect the state's interests with the due diligence process. So in the next few minutes, as we talk about what kind of impediments you may be experiencing and what we can do to support you, you can also know that the feedback that I gained from you today will be used in a guide that we're going to refresh and expand for the points of contact network that will clarify and reiterate what the expectations are for the role. And also, if there are things that we can learn today that will help other POCs be able to navigate the conversations in their agencies, then we'll be incorporating that as well. So any comments or questions on your experience to date as if you're a point of contact and how well this has been working for you as an approach? What about online? Okay. So in the guide that we produced a year ago to help agencies navigate setting up their agency-level steering committee or their project team, ultimately the point of contact network, these were the roles and responsibilities that we called out. And I think they've essentially stayed the same. As I look at this list today, I don't see anything that shows up as glaringly missing. But I think, as I said a moment ago, we're going to expand, amplify these to help you fulfill your role better. So, for example, the results and accountability piece is what this is all about, although it's not clearly called out. And especially on the very last bullet there, keeping the agency director and leadership informed is so essential for results and accountability. So it's one thing to have a deliverable in the agency with a due date, but we totally get that it's another thing to have the IT folks and the business folks in so many agencies actually learn how to talk to each other. And in the mid to large agencies, even some of the business silos talking to each other can be a challenge. So we get that. Are there things that we could do to help you if you have that kind of a challenge inside your agency? That's one of the things that we would like to hear about. If you have any ideas or experiences that you feel are just representing a mountain of challenge and keeping you from getting results, those are the kind of things we definitely want to hear about. And today you can talk about them here with us, or you can always send an email as well. So let's take a moment and see if there's any conversation that does exist at the moment, any challenges or impediments. Sir, yeah. We're going to get you a microphone, sorry. That'll help our online constituents be able to hear as well.
I represent a micro agency. We don't have applications. We do just policy development work. All of my interface stuff is done through small agency services. So all my HR, all my tech is done through somewhere else. So I get everything, but I'm struggling to understand when I am supposed to actually do something. Because for me, like I think with the tabs, I didn't have anything to submit. I didn't submit anything, but I still get messages like, hey, you're behind on something. So I struggle with how I'm supposed to be able to communicate or know when I am and am not doing something, or how when I don't have something to do, how I make sure you guys have it so that the project stays on track. Because I don't want you guys to have gaps in information. So.
Nicely stated. I like the spirit in which you stated all that. That is awesome. Are you a DES, Small Agency Financial Services customer?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm glad that you took the time to come. Part of the challenge that we're working through, and DES Small Agency team has been absolutely fantastic to work with. But I think the challenge has been on our side, trying to know how to minimize any kind of communications that you would receive that put you in the exact position that you just described, where you don't necessarily have any systems and data, but you're still getting harassed by us. So I think in that situation, wouldn't your team say to go ahead and just send in a statement from the agency saying no data, no systems? And once you do that, then you'll be marked complete, and then we will stop harassing you.
Good. Okay. Needed.
Okay. Good question.
Is there something that someone would like to share that's been highly successful for you in your role as a POC? No.
Online in the room, yeah.
Because I think, when John was expressing, you have a role in which you are talking to your leadership, you're talking to others who need to fulfill some of these roles and responsibilities, and we just want to ensure that you're getting everything you need from us to help you with what you need to communicate and to get that kind of support. And maybe one of you have some great story of how you do it that may be helpful to someone else.
One thing I've encountered is in a lot of the communications that have like due outs or have a deliverable attached to it, some may and some may not have like the actual point of contact that can answer more defined questions or specific questions for the customer or agency and so forth. So maybe if those communications that come to the point of contact themselves has whoever the main point of contact is from your team, whether it's a consultant or staffer, that we know who that person is and how to get a hold of them, so we can ask those questions.
We'll take that down as a thing that we'll look at. It's a great and a totally legitimate comment. Virtually 100% of the communications that we send out do direct all questions and feedback to the generic One Washington inbox. Historically, that has been solely because of our staffing situation. We are very constrained with just 17 people across 3 branches of government. So it's legitimate, and we will pick it up and reconsider it.
Amy online from DRS has a question. When will we start learning more about the details of business transformation, business process changes for planning purposes?
Thank you for that question. Do you have the?
So we'll be getting the system integrator on board. I think also you'll be hearing some things coming out from the business owners themselves asking questions or support in some instances. So that could be coming from finance, from HR, from budget, or from procurement. So there's some questions that could come directly from them to ask inquiring questions about where they're trying to start to do some planning. But I expect you'll see more detail about that kind of planning once the system integrator gets on board, and that's in October. And we'll have a lot more to discuss every time we meet, or information that's being sent to you with a lot more details after that.
And Ann just brought up a really good point. So with the prospective arrival of the system integrator coming this fall, it's a lot more reason for us to have this conversation, the first of them today, and we will be having a series of these that we'll start to offer with you just for points of contact, because as that integrator comes on board, the amount of work is absolutely going to exponentially explode. And the flurry of communications, as well as the anxiety level of people that you work with in your agency, so you'll be dealing with that at the same time we're coming at you. So all the more reason to strengthen the points of contact network.
So you kind of hit on something that I was internally thinking about. This is actually the first time I've ever been to a point of contact meeting. Mm-hmm. So I do feel that although a lot of us might already be part of a specific advisory committee, that for those that are not, that perhaps there is, maybe it's at least a quarterly kind of thing where we are meeting, and maybe you can highlight what future or, next deliverables will be coming out, so we kind of have a better gauge and have a leg up in identifying those resources or impacts at the agency levels.
No, I'm going to get the clicker.
Oh, the clicker.
You can talk about
right.
POC.
So, yes, we are anticipating that very kind of approach where there would probably be a quarterly meeting just for the POC network, and then it'll be up to the agency to decide. So, for example, I know that I'm thinking of one agency that has 27 people on the agency-level steering committee. Another has 13, but some only have 1 or 2. So when we send out the announcement, it'll be up to each agency to decide who goes for that particular event, right? So.
And Greg, I wanted to bring back to this agency impacts. What you're going to start seeing is a lot more details coming out about when these particular activities will be happening, who you need to have involved, when is the due dates for some of these things. One thing that I just reminded a couple of people that I was talking to this morning is, in that analogy, you can't eat an elephant in one whole bite, or I should say you can't, deconstruct the train all in one big whack. However, what is more rings more with you. But we have to take some steps to put things in place that help us to make progress. And while there has been questions, why the interfaces in the systems, why do we need to do that now? Why do we need to get the access points changed now? There is a lot of work and a lot of careful orchestrating that our project management office will be doing, and they are trying to put things in place where they will be able to get done successfully. When we talk about systems and interfaces and integration points, I'm also reminded of the reference checks that I have been attending. And one of the things that they talk about in the reference checks with these other organizations that have implemented an ERP is where at the end, when they were getting down to where they wanted to implement, they ended up going past their implementation date and also had exorbitant costs added on to their project because they didn't have the data flows and the data connections right. The importance of the work that your agencies and your agency's colleagues are doing right now is bringing attention to the way that you use data. How do you report on that data? Where does it go? Where do you store it? And with that, it starts to bring up this awareness between not just the technical staff, the business staff, because the business is the one that owns the data. So that brings up that awareness in order so that they can take a small step here in order to do the next thing, which is with the data flow, data transformation, business transformation, and then the data flows, and then into also defining the data conversion and all of these different things. So they're kind of adding up to the series of where we do the implementation. You can't do that all at one time. I mean, I'm not a superwoman, and I know I can only get so much information into my brain at one time before I let go of something else on the other side. So I know even for myself, I have to break down things into sizable things in order to achieve the success that I want to. So I just am looking at that from, this is a big project. It's one of the most exciting projects for the state of Washington. The fact that we can transform and put efficiency and effectiveness into the way that we process checks, the way that we do our purchasing. Instead of, and I was just talking to a couple of you earlier before we started, you have still manual processes where you may download data to a spreadsheet and then walk over to a system and hand key it into that system. We can take away some of those things. I'm not going to say all because there's lots of things out there, and it'll be over time. But the excitement about the new system and the excitement I saw when people were going through the demos, well, you can take 2 of those systems and 4 of those interfaces off of my list. I'll send that to you because now I can see that's going to be in the system and I won't have to do that anymore. Can you imagine the excitement of your staff to have that kind of thing happening for them? There was something back here.
I do get questions from when you send out the stuff, but it's not as with the enthusiasm that you seem to have.
So I've been in state government for 27 years. I worked for WSU for one of my pieces of stints that I did at that point in time. And when I worked for WSU, I had to go out and had to get my own contracts. I had to manage those contracts. I had to find staff for those contracts. I had to then deliver the deliverables under that contract. And you better not have overspent the contract in WSU world because you didn't spend or you got your ticket to go somewhere else. The part that why I bring that up is because there is a circle of what every agency goes through in asking for a budget and putting forward a budget of funding to where you then are funded for those things. And then you work to get the staff and get them to operate in towards those objectives that you're trying to deliver. And then supporting them in the activities of HR and payroll and looking at the finances of how you're governing the work that you're doing. And for many of you, you don't get extra dollars from a lot of different places. Some of you have a few contracts that come in. Some of you do with federal funds. But ultimately, you face the same thing that I did at WSU. And that is then at the end of the year, you put forward another set of objectives and the operations of your organization to then be funded for the next. My excitement comes from the fact, can we put more efficiency into what you will get with your people and how you will do that? My excitement comes from, it's a new world and a way of doing things that empowers you and your agencies to continue to work on what is also those mission objectives. How many more children, could we go out there and do consulting with? How many more foster homes? How many cars can we have on the road that don't get in an accident, or where we're doing protective types of services? So it goes a long ways in all of your agencies in the mission that you deliver. And I'm excited to see that you have time to do that with better data, more transparency, and quicker ways in getting purchasing and the things through your HR that you need to do instead of waiting months in order for that to happen. That's my excitement. After 27 years, seeing the opportunity for this to take place, to me, is what we need. And if I need to come talk to Chief Batiste about that, I will.
Thank you, Steve, for that comment, too. We'll take it. Can I make one last comment? I know we're running out of time. The what? Oh. Yes, I got it. Thank you. All right. So the last point that Ann had talked on right before I came up was on the next 4 weeks of escalation activities. And I just wanted to clarify that if you have your data tab and you send it in and you get marked complete, then you will fall off the radar from the subsequent weeks escalation activities. So just for clarity, once you're in, marked complete, you're off the list, okay? Meaning the quarterlies? Yeah, so the comment that Greg brought up, I did acknowledge that we're probably looking at probable quarterly approaches to having those conversations. Yeah.
And a lot more details.
Yes.
So with that, oops.
That's it. So you'll get an electronic copy of the slide deck. Each one of those is hyperlinked up there. And you can see reference number 4. That is not actually a thing. It was actually going to be a resource, the Budget Buddy, but it never came to materialize. So before we hit the final send button today, we will remove that so that that item will not be on there. If you like social media, Facebook, Twitter, etc., any Twitter users in here? Just out of curiosity, 1 at least, okay, 2. So we do have our own OFM Twitter account now for One Washington. There it is. And if you happen to watch our signature blocks from any one of the staff, you'll also see the LinkedIn and Facebook accounts as well. I think I'm done with my part.
And thank you very much. So with that, we have, I think, key takeaways. So please ensure your agency's data requirements for the new ERP are submitted. Ensure that your agency data stewards and data champions have support. We've heard in some ways a little bit that they're struggling to get some attention from their business owners or from tech. So it goes either way. So just if you could check in with them. Communicate to leadership about what's going on and the need for the business partners on these requests. And don't forget by the end of this week to put in your percentage of complete so that we can report that out next week. And ensure cleanup of the system and interface inventories by April 1st, along with the data tab 3 submission no later than April 1st. And with that, I will let you go. And if there's any questions you want to stay around and ask me, I'd be more than happy to answer that, or Lori or John or Misty. Thank you very much.